ladies and gentlemen, this is the part that I've been looking forward to invite you to join. But let's start with my panel members here, because they're going to engage a number of the things we've heard. And I want this to be as interactive as possible. And so I'm hoping that each of the panel members have a microphone, because I want this to be very interactive. As also, I invite my audience to join and engage. In fact, I want to start with you, Honorable Minister, because of the number of things that you started. And so I've heard Dr. Abu Sakara, Mr. Kairewe, and the former Deputy Agric Minister. I believe you might have a few things you want to say in response to what you heard. Then we can move on into some of the specifics. If you do, please feel free to do so. If you don't, we can go into the Q&A. Should we? Okay. Since we ended with Mr. Kairewe, who was assessing the current policies that we have, I think it's good to start from there. And I want to quickly circle back to our theme for today, because it's important. We shouldn't lose sight of why we're here. Securing the economy with agriculture. And I want to situate my question within the current policy. And essentially ask a broad question whether that policy delivers a secure economy within agriculture. But I want to be more specific. I don't want to be general. I want to be very specific to some of the details of the current policy when it comes to the Plan for Food and Jobs. And I want to go straight to, and Dr. Sakara talks about the crops that we focus on. And this policy has a focus when it comes to crops. It focuses on maize, rice, soya beans, sorghum, and vegetables. My question is, in talking about securing the economy with agriculture, are these the crops that will get us to secure the economy? Is my question. But I'm not going to start with you, because you are the driver and the person who brought the policy. So I want to start with Dr. Abu Sakara on this, because you touched on crops. Securing the economy with agriculture. I just mentioned the crops that we are focusing on with the current policy. Again, maize, rice, soybean, sorghum, and vegetables. Are these the crops that gets us there?
Well, first of all, purely from the point of view of contribution to GDP, whilst cocoa has a very high contribution to our export earnings, in actual fact, the food crops contribute more than 40% to our GDP. So yes, they are the crops that you should focus on, because they are the source of the biggest contribution to your GDP.
Can we do something about the microphones, please?
The second issue, which I alluded to earlier on, is that they have a very high element, key parts of them, and I'll go to them: rice and soybean. They have a very high element of import substitution. Rice has already been demonstrated, so I won't talk about that. But the key one, which we tend to glaze or gloss over, is soybean. Soybean is the reason, not soybean as a crop in itself, but a legume, is the reason we don't have a poultry industry. If you don't have enough production of legumes to mix with your cereal crops to provide poultry feed, you can hardly have a poultry industry. Just any day of the week, go to the airport, you will hear chip, 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 chip. These are chickens, chicks, day-old chicks. They have been flown from Holland or wherever they have been flown from. They've landed in this hot climate. They've been sitting on the tarmac for a few hours, and they're now going to be distributed throughout, the country to poultry farmers. And the good food they were eating there, they're going to get a shock when they start getting offered some food here, So you have to have a good source of legume. And I think the importance of soybean in unlocking the constraint on our poultry industry is way, 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 way overestimated. So I would say yes.
Yes. Dr. Hassan, what would you say to that question?
Yeah, I do agree entirely with what
Dr. Sakara
has said, except to add that every animal industry has its foundation on the crop performance. So if you want to energize your agric industry, you have to focus on the raw material base before you can speak of other things that will add value to the crops. You have to have enough carbohydrates and energy to go around. And when and then you share with the poultry industry or livestock industry to convert that into protein. And then when the cycle is complete, you have their livestock also impacting on the crop. So it's a good basis to start so that the wheel can be strong in the final analysis.
Okay. Mr. Carraway, same verdict?
Well, the importance of the crop sector in the dynamics of our economy is enormous. But it's not just about the production, because it is not as though we have not been producing in this country. Whenever, or you have often been hearing that there's glut here and there, it's because they're produced and there's no market. So when you are increasing the production, you must be very careful how much of the production you have to increase so that it does not lead to almost total loss of capital that a farmer will incur because he has produced and he hasn't gotten the market. So if you look at the current expectation, which is 30% on maize, 49% on rice, you have to juxtapose that with the market. When you produce rice, it is not just the rice that is on the farm. It is how the rice is processed. It is how the rice is advertised, packaged, and so on. So whilst you are doing the production, you must be concerned about your other countervailing policies. Imports, what are we doing with the imports that will drown the domestic market? And that is why I say that the market we are talking about is fictitious. Today, there's no market in Ghana because the market has been occupied by two areas, domestic production and then imports. So if you are increasing domestic production, you must be able to free the market for the increased domestic produce to fit into it. So that must, and I'm not, so we may think that we'll increase the production. Yeah, we'll end up doing that. That's what I'm saying, it's production-based.
So are these crops, the crops, a secure economy?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
But they are going to address poverty issues as of now.
Okay.
Because the policy...
But okay, great. So that your verdict is, it's not entirely the case that these crops by themselves will deliver a secure economy.
Yes.
That's your verdict. Let me hear from the minister now. Respond to that.
Thank you. First of all, let me make a correction here. These crops that we are talking about is for the first year. That is the menu. We are going to add other crops as we go along. We cannot do everything at the same time. Management is about prioritizing at any one moment. So this year we are adding cassava. For 2018, we'll be adding cassava, maybe granules and so on. We are still discussing. The season is far away, so April next year. So we are still in the planning stage. So it's not cast in iron that it's going to be these 5 crops for the 4 years that the people of Ghana has given us the mandate to rule. The same thing in terms of this concentration, the focus on selected farmers. We are talking about 200,000 for a pilot scheme in the first year, which we are almost finishing. Next year, we are saying that we are targeting, we expanded to 500,000, 2019 to 1 million, and so on. We have to learn how to crawl before we walk, before we run. And that's the essence of what we are trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to now take questions and contributions from my audience. I want to start with Charles Sabugri, who's the CEO of SADA. Told is somewhere here, and he has a contribution to make. Yes.
Thank you, honorable ministers and the panel. Just a few points. I work in the savannah, mainly the northern savannah. The savannas in the world have over 65% of the remaining arable lands. It is the place for grains and livestock. The land suitability analysis we have conducted in the last 2.5 years in the northern savanna suggests that only sorghum, pearl millet, shea butter, to some extent granules, fodder grass, can thrive close to maximum yield without irrigation. Research, but even then, the quality of seed, as the Honorable Minister had mentioned, is critical to go even closer to maximum yield without irrigation. Research on seeds in these areas have lagged behind other crops. Crops like rice, sugarcane, maize, and soya thrive only in the valleys, and the maximum yield they get without irrigation fluctuates and can't get anywhere close to global maximum thresholds. They need irrigation. Fortunately, in the northern savanna, every year, well over 40 million cubic meters of water on average pounds on the land, and it runs off. A strategy for organizing that water and channeling it to irrigation is critical for any of these crops to actually thrive. Those who have tried to farm maize and rice with irrigation in northern Ghana experience another problem: high levels of energy costs. The cost of diesel for pumping, the cost of electricity from. So preferential policy on energy is also critical. The soils suffer three main problems. They are acidic, they have serious phosphate deficiency, and they have serious organic matter deficiency. Fortunately, in the area, there are large quantities of limestone. And the transformation of the Brazilian savanna was based on harnessing that limestone to address acidity. Will that be eventually also a priority policy for the ministry? Finally, I think many of the issues of financing and things have been raised by Abu Sakara, so I don't want to. But crops have the maximum impact on the economy if they are so organized that they also promote processing and value addition in situ and closest to the areas of production. That requires organizing infrastructure of energy, roads, water, and to ensure volumes. And volumes requires this mixture of farm sizes, small, medium, and large. That means the strategy should also include clustering and deliberately organizing the spaces that will stimulate this. In a sense, it can't happen simply through allowing the private sector to respond. It has to be organized. So would this be clustering and organizing this an important part of the ministry's approach to making agriculture work in the north?
Mr. Abugi, thank you very much. Doc, you want to quickly respond to his questions? Please feel free to do so. And I'm going to come to, as the microphones go around, I'll see by hand and I'll catch my eye and I'll let you have your say on this.
Yes, I think I agree with Mr. Bugri about the factors that he's mentioned in the savannah. The savannah has its own sets of challenges, and so are the forest zones and the southern savannah. It's very critical, but infrastructure, that's very, very important, which he mentions in a basket of items that he has done. Now, talking about irrigation, I'm sure Mr. Bugri has heard of One Village, One Dam. It's something that we are working on very seriously, and it's actually meant mainly for the northern savannah. I have submitted the first-year plans to cabinet, and is being considered, will be factored into the 2018 budget to start the implementation. See, all these things we acknowledge are important, but we are strong believers in the fact that you have to crawl before you walk, before you run. So we take these things step by step in accordance with what the economy can afford. But definitely the intention is there. It was in our manifesto about irrigation. Next week, we are going to have a workshop on what we call the Marshall Plan for Agriculture. And the Marshall Plan for Agriculture is actually to challenge this issue about infrastructure. We have whole areas of very fertile land, very fertile. I mean, I have in mind, say, their front plains, which is cut off from the rest of the country. We need money to link their front plains to the Greater Accra, to Ashanti, through Aguko, to get to the markets for investors to be able to go there and take advantage of the huge resource that God has given us. So, Mr. Bugui, we are very much in line with you, and we are definitely doing something through public resource allocations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are live on Joy 99.7 FM. We are live on the JoyNews channel on Multi TV. This is the Graphic Business and Stanbic Bank Business Breakfast meeting, and we are exploring securing the economy with agriculture. And it's brought to you, kind courtesy, the Graphic News app. Busy internet, great things happening, Labadi Beach Hotel, and of course, Joy 99.7 FM. I want to take a few more of your contributions, and please keep it very precise, straight to the point. I see a microphone there. Yes, please. Is there a question or a contribution?
It's a contribution.
Okay, great. Very brief, sir.
I wish that we had more bankers around. But once Stanbic is here, I would go to agricultural funding. And the unfortunate thing is that for this theme to be realistic, we have to take so many things into consideration: the soil, the planting material, the crop life, that's the crop protection, and post-harvest. I'm coming from Omnifed, an indigenous Ghanaian company. We are trying to provide a total solution cycle in the agricultural space. But when it comes to agricultural funding, the banks are not ready to start with you. But when you become successful, now they try coming to you, come and open an account with us. If the banks cannot entrust us with even their pen, because when you get to the banking hall, you see their pens being, tied, how can they entrust you with their money? But they want us to entrust them with our money when we have become successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll get a response to that very shortly. Dr. Buksakar, I'm sure you want to have a bite at that when I come around to the... I see more hands. Who has a microphone, please? Great, yes.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Lydia Sasu. I'm Executive Director of Development Action Association, a member of Farmers Organization Network in Ghana, and then a member of Small Scale Farmers in West Africa, which is ROPA. And I'm going to talk on women. We've done a lot. We've said a lot. I heard saying that the rural women farmers, most of them are illiterate. Yes, we are illiterate. And we feed the country. About 70% of the food that is produced is from these rural women. I was following my mother during my infancy, and the same method of working, of farming, we are carrying, working on bad roads to sell food crops. And mechanization is something that I want to tackle. Mechanization. Now, our sisters at rice growing area, they just called me that, please emphasize on the tillers and then harvesters. It's something that is bothering them. We are looking at dryers. We are looking at hygienic food. If the maize is not well dried, we'll get aflatoxin. Am I telling lies? If the the fish, there's nobody here on fish, but the minister said something on fish. Fish, if the fish is not well handled, it will have a problem. We have IUU, which is going on, and this is what we are all looking at, hammering that we have to get at least Sardinella back into the sea. There are so few things that are going on, and we need to encourage. We emphasize. We also would like to thank the government for Galamsey. Now, the land has been cleared. We need good fertilizers so that we can work on the land because it has been turned upside down. So these are few things that we are looking at. If possible, the government can come back and then see the rural women in the villages, illiterate, feeding the country, but most of the time we are not included. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think this is a fantastic contribution to have as great. I have another woman.
Hi. Thank you very much. I have maybe 2 or 3 issues.
Yes, but you can make it very brief.
Very, very brief.
Yes.
Okay. Number one, I think that all this discussion, and I really want to go back to the guy from Gawo and I say, buddy, thank you. You said a lot of things that I wanted to say. The government, I think, must focus on providing public infrastructure and allow space for private sector to thrive. I think one of the problems we are having is the competition and the crowding out of private sector where they effectively work. GIHOP didn't work. Food distribution did not work. Women are still selling and aggregating and bringing food to us. So we are begging that government policy, whatever it may be, should be looking at empowering science and technology, and I love that, empowering the dissemination of the science and technology, the technology to farmers, creating the infrastructure, the roads to bring the food to the market, because if there's no market, we can plant whatever we like. It will not get anywhere. People, it will be glutted. So we need to move. We need to remove the hindrances from production to consumption. And please, if you plant rice in this country and it comes to the market with grits in it, we will still buy imported rice. The problem is not the planting alone. The problem is the processing to make it respond to demand. These days, Ghanaians have become sophisticated in their taste, you know. So you've got to do things that will attract market. And I think that's what we are lacking. The seed industry, I think, yes, we need to do something about it. But I really don't think CSIR, they are equipped to market seed. They don't have the efficiencies to market properly. They make the foundation, but please, production and marketing belongs to the private sector. Thank you.
Great. I want to now come to my panel to respond. I have 3 contributions already. I want them to respond to that, and then I'll come for the next batch. I want to start with you, Dr. Hassan, because that last point was to you. The role of CSIRL in marketing and getting the seeds out there. Your quick response to that, and then I'll come to Dr. Busakara and end with the minister again.
Nana knows my position with respect to these things. I've always said, even when I was deputy minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, that the ministry has no business doing business. Our job is to deliver technology to individuals and corporate bodies who are in the field to do their frontline activities. So I agree with her perfectly that the best a public institution can do is to demonstrate that something works. But if it is to work for profit, that is entirely in the hands of the private sector. And note, as I said earlier on, that people should not regard agriculture as a public sector business. The majority of the 5 million farmers that the Honorable Minister was referring to are all private people. They make their individual decisions. They decide what they want to grow. They decide where they want to send their produce, which market they want to send their product. The government doesn't control that. But for some reason, because government represents the policy environment, it's as if government also tries to sell. I said so that we need to support the sector of the necessary infrastructure. The last point I just want to make is that the Minister of Agriculture is only a coordinating agency, and they don't have all the capacity to deal with everything that impacts on agriculture. When you are talking about roads, the ministry doesn't have the mandate to build roads. But the Ministry of Roads and Highways must listen to the Ministry of Agriculture in deciding which priority roads will support the sector. This is how, as institutions, we must coordinate. Even the Nutrition Committee or Nutrition Working Group in the Ministry of Agriculture is being led by the Ministry of Health, so that the Ministry of Health can tell the Ministry of Agriculture what crops to produce that will impact on the nutrition of the people. This is how we must work. And I believe that as we institutionalize and move forward, yes, it has to be the case. The institutions may not be good at marketing seed, but I think what the Honourable Minister is trying to do is that currently, as we sit, they have the infrastructure that can deliver the seed that he requires to plow into the Planting for Food program. Not that that is what SARI or CRI was established to do. They are only given a hand to get a system to run as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sakara, there's a very important point that had run through everything I've heard here about market. That there's a sense, Mr. Kariwe mentions it, a lot of that, I've talked about the fact that we should move from production to consumption and creating a market that you can produce all you want. If you don't have the market, we are not going anywhere. You are a farmer. Is there the market? If it's not, how do we create it?
Well, I think first of all, the market is there. The issue is competitiveness. If so many tons of a product are being consumed within your vicinity, wherever it comes from, locally or otherwise, that represents a market. You now have to produce competitively and be able to capture part of the market. Now, when we talk about the enabling environment, this is where we say, okay, yes, there's some emphasis on eliminating the constraints involved in production now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be limited to that. There are going to be other interventions to eliminate the constraints related to marketing, particularly those related to transaction costs. One of the biggest costs in marketing that makes us uncompetitive is cost of transportation, and also getting produce from from farms just to the homestead. I don't know if any of you have ever done this simple calculation. I'm glad that the representative of the women is here. 90% of the food we eat on our tables that are produced domestically, for the first 4 or 5 kilometers, they're transported on the heads of women and children. That is because most farms are at least 3, 4, 5, 6 kilometers from where people live. And there's no road. It is farm track roads. Don't think about feeder roads. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about farm track roads from the production center to the village. So these, let's take, for example, 1 ton of maize, which is 1,000 kilograms. All of you sitting here know that you're not allowed to pack more than 30 kilograms in your suitcase at the airport because it is dangerous for the backs of the airport workers. So let's say that the women can only carry 20 kilograms on their heads. So divide that 1,000 kilograms by 20. Then multiply that by the 3 kilometers that he has to walk to the farm and 3 kilometers that he has to walk back. They end up walking almost 600 kilometers to transport that 1,000 kilograms of maize. It's no wonder that some of the women kick the maize into the bush because they're tired. And that's where the post-harvest losses begin. So what do we do about this? There's a need for us to think about how we begin to use rural young men to improve farm track roads with these small motor kings, which are serving as a taxi from farms to villages. That can be part of Planting for Food and Jobs, and I highly recommend it to the minister.
Fantastic solution there. Mr. Kariwe, there are bits of this that also, I guess, same point really. I mean, from what we heard from some of the questions that came, one of the key things that women, because you represent a group of farmers, we haven't really touched on the role of women in the, but we all know without them, don't be a sector, because he said 70% of what we eat really come from them. Dr. Musaka demonstrated that clearly with his example that he gave there. Are the policies that we are pursuing today doing enough to recognize the role and that women are playing, and to encourage them to do more and to make their work, I guess, more efficient? And how do we get the policies that recognize the role that they do?
Well, the current policies are on their own. They are not to the needs of the people. And that's why we are saying that policies we must begin to develop them based on rights of the people. Those women, our women have the right to live a dignified life. And that duty to make sure that they live that dignified life rests with the government, rests with the policymaker. So when we accept that right, then we will now develop policies to actually fulfill that right, because it is also our duty. But as it stands, and given the discussions that we are having here, it means they are tangential. They stand on their own. So we need to begin to calibrate our policies to address those needs going forward. And that is where we can address successfully the challenges that are facing women and are facing those who have got the right to produce. I've got the right to produce the food that I want to eat. I've got the right. So who is going to provide me the duty to do that? Government and policy makers have got that duty. So they provide me that duty, I produce it, I have the right to market it. Then they now look around and see how they can facilitate the market. So,
do you have the market? Your members, do they have the market locally?
It's just not yes and no. They have the market to some extent. And if you take Minister of Agric own statistics, if they are talking about yam, for instance, according to the data, that 60% of yam does not get to the table of the consumer.
Where are they going to? Where are they disappearing to?
They get lost. They get rotten.
60%, you said?
60%. And you can, because we are journalists, you can walk on the street and see the way yam is perishable, highly perishable, and it's also heavy. Because it is heavy to transport, and it is also fragile, you can believe that much of it will get rotten. Whether the figure is actually 60% or not, but the point that is made here is that it will get rotten before it gets to the table of the consumer. And this needs to be looked at.
Let me get the Honorable Agric Minister to respond to a lot of the things that have been said already.
Yes, I'm actually mystified by some of the statistics being rolled out by my unionist friend here. 60% losses and all that. I have no idea that 60% of yams are lost. I have absolutely no idea. And I'll be interested to find out from him his source of information. But let me get back to the two ladies in terms of inclusiveness. The fact that through our pricing policies of subsidy, we are able to provide the opportunity for the poorest farmer to be able to purchase and apply improved seed and fertilizer. In itself, it's an inclusive policy. Food production is dominated by women in this country. We know that. So if we are reducing the price to enable them to be able to afford it, of course, it's an inclusive policy. And the beneficiaries will be mostly the women. And we have it as a fact that you go to the Savannah Belt, you come down to the south here in the forest zone, they are the beneficiaries. So it is a very possible thing. I like the comment made by the First Lady from the Development Action Association about mechanization. You know, one of the biggest constraints on poultry, as Dr. Abu Sakara said, is the soil. Now, you go to the north, they'll tell you, that the biggest constraint on soya is the harvesting, because it's a very tedious work and it's done by women. And if you plant so much of it and you can't get them harvested within a space of 3 days, you can lose the whole crop, because then after a certain level of drying, they start popping and you lose everything. So it's very critical that we introduce some mechanization into harvesting of soya, for instance, if we are very serious about expanding soya. And of course, we are very serious. Next year, the two most important crops that we are going to promote in 2018, following our lessons from this year, are soya and rice. Rice, obviously, we can't afford to be spending $1 billion on importing rice when we have large masses of land here, very suitable for rice production. That's obvious. For soya, as he said, the reason why we chose soya and maize is basically for the poultry. We are importing about 150,000 metric tons of poultry meat into this country, which works out at the equivalent of 11 million heads of chicken every year. And we are not even producing 1 million heads of chicken in this country now, when we used to export chicken and eggs from this country 20, 30 years ago. So these are some of the things that if we really want to get the poultry industry going, we need to tackle the issue of soya and maize. The maize thing, I see that we are almost having the hang of it. But the soya is a challenge, and I'm glad that my friend from Yara is here. We are working with private sector companies to try and see how best we can accelerate the production of soya in the northern belt where it flourishes best, so that we link up with the poultry industry. The poultry industry, together with us at the ministry, have come up with a 5-year development plan to make Ghana self-sufficient in 5 years. And to do that, we need 400,000 metric tons of maize every year, just for the poultry industry, and 170,000 metric tons of soya, just for the poultry industry, which to form the basic basic ingredients for poultry feed. And poultry feed is about 75%, 80% of cost of production. If we can provide that kind of those quantities, then of course we can begin to reduce and save our precious foreign exchange for our development and not for consumption. So these are some of the things that we are looking at. As far as marketing is concerned, I reckon that we need about 200,000 metric tons storage capacity to effectively market our maize surpluses. At the moment, as a government, we don't even have 32,000. We have had to commandeer warehouses from Ghana Cocoa Board now, which they are not using, another 97,000 metric ton capacity, and we are still short. So you realize that 10 days ago, the president went to Ejura to inaugurate this one district, one warehouse, and we are determined that each district should have a warehouse, so at least to be able to store the surpluses whilst we are doing to facilitate the market and all that. So government is doing quite a lot in guaranteeing that the surpluses that we are, the bumper crop that we are expecting from planting for food and jobs will be catered for. And that is what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to, there's a question that came about the banks and how they relate to the farmers. And it was a very interesting comment about how the banks simply will not listen to them until they succeed and then you want their money. Mr. Hansen Danny will try and respond to that for us.
I'll try and respond to this. I've attended a number of Agric fora, and it's consistent the way the crowd often reacts when it comes to agri-finance. And it's very interesting. I like to observe that apart from the human brain, the next most important resource is money. Do you agree? Because it is that single resource that you can literally apply to everything, from agriculture to sending people to space. It's all money. In my career, I have spent a lot of time dispensing credit. I joined SSB in 1984, and dispensed credit to irrigation farmers at the Wager Dam. Small-scale farmers who were doing less than a hectare. 1987 to 1990, I was in Bolgatanga extending credit farmers on the Tono and Via irrigation scheme. I produced a national best farmer. I just saw him in the corner there. So, and as I moved along, I've extended credit to large commercial farmers, both in agriculture, both in crops, poultry, animal husbandry. And I like to say that it's been a very, very interesting experience, not just for the farmers, but for the banks. And I just like to say that for me and for Standard Bank, the outcome of this forum should be to create the enabling environment that enables farmers, agribusiness people, to access this most important resource called money in a very competitive manner. So we have to have a national level organization that makes agribusiness something that people look up to. We have to have, within the national economy, the agri-sector organization that makes farming or agribusiness attractive. We have to have, at the farmer or business unit level, organization that makes the deployment of capital into these units profitable. I must say that from where we stand, we are very, very far away as agribusiness to attract the most important resource that every sector needs. But we also agree that it is the mother of all economies. In fact, my view of agriculture is the first line of national defense and national security. If you don't have food, forget about anything. So we have to really think very carefully and not get distracted with comments that says there's no financing for agriculture. There is financing for agriculture. I mean, there are banks around the world that have finance, that we finance, Standard Bank finance agriculture big way in economies where the country knows where they are going with agriculture, in countries where the industry as an integrated industry knows what they are doing and what the individual farmer at his own unit business level knows what his or she is doing. We are very far away from it. And that is our intent for being part of this platform, that we can come to the national consensus on where we are going with agriculture. We can come to an industry consensus. How will we work together in an integrated manner to make this a good business? And we'll come to a consensus how you, the individual farmer, firm level, you organize yourself to attract the most important resource, which is money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to take the last round of questions and comments, and then I'll get my panel to wrap up in the next beside Hassan and Danny, and I'm going to take 3 more from the audience, and then we'll wrap up.